So the Acolyte episode 4 just aired tonight, at least on the night when I'm starting this recording, and the reviews are in, and it sounds like not much has changed. Just less lore killing.
After watching episode 3, I didn't think that anything could be as bad as that one. And to be fair, I don't think that this episode is as bad as the previous one, but that's like saying that a car wreck is not as bad as a train wreck. And the reason I say it's like a car wreck is not because it's really horrible, but because it's just flat out boring. It doesn't do anything to actually make the show any better. Now, to be fair, there's once again a couple of things that I did like. The first thing is that Master Soul continues to be an interesting character.
That's from a channel called Was It Good? Question mark, and I'll try to remember to leave the link below. Now, as it's been from day one with the critics of the Acolyte, which is his name, Lee Jung Jai, I believe. Lee Jung Jai, yeah. He continues to be praised, and pretty much the only thing being praised about this show, in contradiction to Grace Randolph from Beyond the Trailers lie that he was being attacked. And that there was horrible attacks coming from critics of the Acolyte against Lee Jung Jae. To the contrary, he's actually been praised by pretty much all of the critics over and over again from the very first episode being reviewed in the previews that went out to critics who get those previews. So that continues to be the case there. And you've probably figured out by now that I have not watched this show, not any of it. I wouldn't watch it. I don't have Disney Plus. I wouldn't give them my money or watch their programs and contribute to the destruction of Star Wars. I decided probably over a year ago that I wasn't going to let Star Wars hurt me anymore. I wasn't going to let Lucasfilm uh, have any power over me being worried about what they're doing. So for the most part, I ignore it and laugh at it at best. But you might then say, how can you have commentary about something that you haven't seen? Well, what my commentary is going to be on what I have seen and observed. And what I can see and observe, number one, much of the show is put out there in clips and various detailed rundowns. So I do actually know what's happening in the show without having watched it. But we could even go before we even get to that point. Let's just talk about what the people promoting the show have put out about this show and have presented about the show and about themselves and how they view the world of Star Wars. That gives us great insight to let you know whether or not you're going to enjoy something or whether or not you care for what they are promoting and putting forth. And I can absolutely have an opinion based on the material that they put out in public about whether I'm interested in a property or not. And I want to talk about some of those things. And we can see with instances such as this.
My character, she's a powerful leader. She's a powerful leader. Yes. In a very woman-centered world, which I was very excited to kind of be that, because I feel like Star Wars is very like patriarchal.
So that was at last year's Star Wars celebration. And they start off the launch of the show with reductive, divisive modern day politics, where they're claiming women disempowerment and bringing that into our mythology and lore, into our fantasy, and claiming that women have been disempowered in a franchise where the very first scene starts with Senator Leia leading the rebellion, leading the capturing and the dissemination of the Death Star plans and getting it to the rebel forces and recruiting the team that's going to end up saving the galaxy. And the person who they're handing it off to is Mon Mothma, who is the political head of the rebellion, who later becomes the galactic president. Then we move on to the next trilogy, which starts off with Queen Padme, a teenage young woman who again becomes a senator and is the head of all that is happening in directing the political backing and the kind of the political power person behind the total resistance against the takeover of the empire. And then we go into the third trilogy, which has Supergirl, female Luke as the protagonist and the super powerful most powerful Jedi ever, more than the chosen one, Anakin and Rey. But this is patriarchal disempowerment of women, and this is just what we have to, what we get and what we deal with the mind frame that is being brought to bear on how the storytelling and how the world of Disney Star Wars is developed and projected. Now let's continue with this other clip that is also from last year's Star Wars celebration.
I mean, the best parts about Star Wars is there is no good or evil. It depends on what side you're standing on.
Except where it isn't.
The show is truly about that balance of power and balance of good versus evil.
That's truly not what Star Wars is about. It's explicitly and specifically about good and evil. That is the whole basis of Jedi versus Sith, Republic versus Empire, Luke versus Vader. These movies were based on 1940s serials, and which Flash Gordon, most particularly, people like to bring up a number of the other things that it was based on, Hidden Fortress and some of the Kawasaki films and Seven Samurai and all these things. And elements were taken from a lot of those other things. The bare minimum basis of Star Wars is Flash Gordon. In fact, George Lucas wanted to do Flash Gordon, and when he couldn't get the rights, he decided to do his own space opera, which became Star Wars. Luke Skywalker is Flash Gordon, which is all about good versus evil. That's what these movies were created to be about. That's the basic, intrinsic, central theme and purpose of Star Wars. And the people now who are given Star Wars, who get to make Star Wars, don't even understand it at a core basic level. They don't know Star Wars. They don't care about Star Wars. They certainly don't love Star Wars. They don't understand Star Wars. But most importantly, they don't like Star Wars. And that's why they've changed it into something other than what it is, which makes it not Star Wars. And that's why we, the Star Wars fans, are right for not liking and not accepting the garbage that they hand us in a Star Wars skin. They've taken the carcass of these movies that I grew up with, that I first watched on TV as a kid in the 80s, as a 7, 8 year old in the late 80s, and got to see these first on TV for, it just captured my imagination and the whole lore of what it was, and the majesty and that intrinsic battle of good versus evil, of right versus wrong, of the faith and friendship and the love of the Rebel Alliance and of the group of Luke, Leia, Han, and Chewie, who always gets thrown aside and left out, and what they meant to each other versus the Sith and the Empire, who are all about their own power and blowing up planets and killing millions. It is objectively evil. Darth Vader was created for us to understand that he was the personification of evil. He was the devil himself. That was the whole concept. You were made to feel that this guy was the personification of evil. And that's what a lot of the lure that draws you in is seeing that evil defeated by the Jedi, who were the benevolent entity in the galaxy. This was all set up in the movies themselves without any outside commentary. Then George Lucas will tell you the whole point of his trilogy was about good and evil. These people don't understand Star Wars, and they don't like Star Wars, and that's why they set to destroy Star Wars and replace it with their reductive viewpoint of the world, with their ideologies of kind of uh, whatever feels good, do it, but not even that. It's more of the fact that they are into kind of this uh, moral relativism. That's what there's no good and there's no evil comes from. And they don't understand the force or what it's about. That's why they abuse it and misuse it so dramatically to where it's unrecognizable to those of us who've grown up with Star Wars and love what it is and what it represented. because the Force is not balancing good and evil. Again, the prophecy of Anakin was that he was supposed to destroy the was supposed to destroy the Sith, that he was going to restore balance to the Force, not leave it in darkness. If if bringing darkness to light is balancing the Force and having an equal balance of evil and good is what balances the Force, then how could the prophecy of the chosen one be to destroy the Sith and bring balance to the Force? How could bringing balance to the Force, or the way Obi-Wan put it was, you're supposed to bring balance to the Force, not leave it in darkness. If bringing darkness brings balance to the Force, then leaving it in darkness after 1,000 generations of light would be balance. But Obi-Wan's telling him he wasn't bringing balance to the Force. He was supposed to, but leaving it in darkness, bringing darkness on, does not balance the Force. They have no concept of the Force. They don't understand it at a basic level. They actually think you're supposed to have equal parts of good and evil in the world. What kind of sense does that make? That is their moral relativism. That is their kind of Nietzschean ideologies of the world. And then you see that represented in their version of Star Wars. You see that with the Coven and their, again, moral relativism that they want to interject into how what the culture of Star Wars looks like and feel like. But that is not Star Wars. That is not the Force. It is not a string that you snatch out of the continuum to turn into whatever you want it to be. And so they cannot make Star Wars that is actually Star Wars and that is faithful to the lore and to the ethic and the essence of what it is. And that's why we wholeheartedly reject it and should continue to reject it. I'll leave this here for now. I have much more to say on the show in general, but we'll wait till after next week's episode airs and we'll give some commentary on what happened in that episode, if anything actually happened, as we see here this week. It seems like more boringness and mostly more nothingness. But we'll come back with the commentary on next week's episode, plus further commentary on the greater show. I'm Lion Runner at Reviews and Revisits, both here on YouTube as well as reviews _and_ revisits on Instagram. Please like and subscribe here on YouTube. Like me up, subscribe here, follow me on Instagram. I'd really appreciate that. If you go ahead and hit that like button, that would really be great. I'm Lion Runner, and I'm going to get back at you on the next one. May the Force be with you.